rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times. Star Wars #1.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Hey, Star Wars fans, Jimmy Mack here with you, and welcome back once again to Rebel Force Radio, Star Wars podcasting, coming at you for Friday, March 1st, 2019. Yeah, we're back. I didn't even know if we were going to do a show this week. I'm pretty surprised, actually, but we had so much fun last week with Billy Mack and taking listener calls and voicemail. I wanted to do it again. You can't keep me away from it. Of course, we don't have Jason Swank with us this week. As I told you last week, Jason had to miss a couple of weeks due to some work commitments, and that's cool. We're holding down the fort for him and keeping his seat warm until he comes back. It's never quite the same without Swank. But like I said, we had such a good time last week. You couldn't keep us away from the microphones this week. Despite the fact I have a little bit of the crud, I still didn't want to take this week off. There's so much cool stuff happening. It's the first day of March, which means we're only, we can now officially say Star Wars Celebration Chicago is next month. Can you believe it? And, of course, I couldn't do this show alone. With me, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Billy Mack.
How you doing, everybody?
How you doing? How you doing?
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, everybody? Hey.
Loser.
Hey, what are you doing here? But, yeah, good to be back. You got the Brothers Mac.
The Brothers Mac.
Well, that would be like, hey, the Bee Gees, isn't it the Brothers Gibb?
The Brothers Gibb.
So that makes us the BMs.
Damn. But so we have a lot of good stuff for you guys this week. Like last week, we're going to be very heavily focusing on what you have to say. The RFR Voice Mail Hotline is wide open for business, and people have been leaving a lot of great comments and opinions and all sort of fun stuff on the voicemail. So we're going to crack that open for some unfiltered, unscreened, and incredible voicemail messages. So that'll be coming up in the second half of the show. We have some news headlines and some other things, but you know what? As far as the voicemail goes, let's just get into our first one because it's an important one, because it comes from the man who sits up on top of the mountain in his ivory tower. That's right, Mr. Iger.
Hi, Jason. Hi, Jimmy. This is Bob. I've got an exclusive for RFR with listeners. If you go to Sam's Club, Costco, or BJ's, you could have a roast porg in a retro plastic case with the classic racetrack motif for $4.99. Upon reflection, I think it would have been nice if Palpatine had a bowl of something or other like Jabba did to nibble on. Maybe he wouldn't have been so consumed with meanness. Walt's frozen head on the Bormonk spider droid is chasing me around the park as the Igernauts are trying to finish things on time. The mouse ears he attached are creepy. Star Wars made Bob cry when he saw the Solo receipts for the third week. Oh boy. Take care, gents.
Oh, short but sweet with Mr. Iger this week. He sounded a little down to me, a little bummed. But, of course, he said he was going through the Solo box office receipts. And so when we were talking about crying in Star Wars, what about the saga makes you cry? What promotes that emotional response from you? For Mr. Iger, it's box office receipts from Solo, a Star Wars story.
And Bamor monk.
Oh, okay. So the Bamor, all right. The Bamor, the Bomar monks.
Bomar monks.
Yeah. The Bomar monks, of course, were those spider droids that populated Jabba the Hutt's palace. You can see one in the background of the shot when Luke enters Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. You see this mechanical spider thing crossing the doorway there in the background, and the mechanical spider thing has a jar or like a fishbowl with a brain in it, okay? Mm-hmm. Yep. And so the Bomar monk spider droids were, it's part of this religious practice. These monks inhabited Jabba's palace before he moved in there. And so it was like a monastery. And these monks, what they would do as a rite of passage to earn spiritual immortality is they would remove their own brains, place them into a fishbowl filled with liquid, and attach it to these spider droid bodies, right?
Right.
That's the Bomar monk. Probably one of my all-time favorite Star Wars characters, and certainly something that should be considered for a spin-off film.
Well, I didn't know that. You don't know that. You can't really see the brain, though, in the movie, right?
Oh, but it's there.
It is there.
It's there.
I've long since seen the production shots of that thing.
Years ago, Hasbro did a mail-away for a Bomar monk action figure, and that was the only time you were able to actually get one of those things. It was a mail away.
There was a Lego one that came with the first Jabba's palace, and it had a little bowl on there, and you put one little Lego piece, the red Lego piece in there, so it looks like brains.
Was it brain shaped Lego, or was it just a normal?
No,
Lego
it was
block?
It was like one of those little circular tiles that just had one stud on it.
Oh,
you just
right,
put that in the bowl, and I mean it does, it does the job. It looks like there's red, like a red liquid in there or something. But that, I don't know, that's a spooky idea, the brain in the bowl. And Star Wars has kind of continued with similar concepts. I think in the recent films they had that decraniated. Remember
the decraniated?
That was kind of the reverse idea. That didn't have a person without the brain. Half of the head lopped off at the top, and then there was the idea that the Shadow Troopers, wasn't that an idea that they were like zombified?
No,
something.
Well, that was from the book Death Troopers, and the Death Troopers were like zombie stormtroopers, but that was old expanded universe, and of course, Death Troopers now are those tall, black, and cool-looking stormtroopers. The decraniated from the Star Wars Rogue One Ultimate Visual Guide. Ghastly medical techniques perfected by a fugitive surgeon known to inhabit the holy city of Jeddah have produced an order of servants known as the Decraniated. Now, they should have a spinoff. I would love to see a spinoff, like you could call it Decraniated v. Bomar monks, and the whole thing could be about a battle between the Decraniated and the Bomar monks. But the Decraniated, so like the top of their heads are lopped off.
Yeah, well, they would complement each other quite well because
one has no brain and the other is nothing but a brain.
Yeah.
But
what a wacky pair!
What a crazy pair! Because they're thoughtless.
Put them on the road together. It's kind of like a buddy cop picture.
The Decraniated and the Bomar monks. That's a spinoff.
That's Holmes and Yo-Yo, basically, right?
Holmes and Yo-Yo. Holy crap.
I'm going really deep.
All right, if anyone could recall that absurdly obscure reference from the late 70s, let us know. Holmes and Yo-Yo. Good Lord. Was that like a CBS series that lasted about 2 months?
I think so. It was not on very
It was a cop with a robot cop partner. And, boy, what a weird show that was.
Played by John Schuck.
Yeah. And he's a familiar face in those old 70s sitcoms and stuff. He showed up in
a lot of movies, too.
What's he best known for?
Probably MASH, I think.
MASH,
He's in the movie MASH.
He was the guy who...
Painless.
Painless. Suicide is painless. Yeah. And, so he was the dentist who they gave him... Yeah, so the Decraniated and Holmes and Yo-Yo and the Bomar monks all together in one incredible film that will really make Bob Iger happy when he looks at those receipts, I'm sure. You can catch a quick glimpse of the Decraniated in a shot from Solo.
Mm-hmm.
Drayden Voss has a Decraniated servant. And you can see, even though those were characters developed for Rogue One, you don't really see them in Rogue One. I think on the streets of Jeddah, you might be able to spot one in the background. Yeah. But in Solo, you get a Decraniated servant in a full shot there, presenting Drayden Voss with like a beverage or something after he kills that Imperial governor or whatever.
Yeah, I've warmed up to that design. I thought it was a little too creepy and weird when I first saw it, but now I don't know. I keep thinking about it. It's so disturbing.
The decraniated. So what else did Mr. Iger mention in there? That he wants to start merchandising like actual porg at Sam's Club, where you can go and get it in vintage packaging and actually eat it. And so you could cook yourself some porg. I mean, that wouldn't be so weird. I mean, I see like mystery meats at warehouse shops all the time, you know. I mean, it's like, what is that supposed to be? So you can have some porg meat. It'll give Palpatine something to snack on. Much like Jabba was snacking on those frogs, Palpatine will just like pull out a porg drumstick and start chomping on it. You know, those are some revolutionary ideas for the future of Star Wars. So I'm so thankful we have a visionary like Mr. Iger who can guide the franchise into new great heights. I'm on board. I'm on board. You know what I'm going to... I just worry that people are going to go to Rotten Tomatoes and give it a bunch of crappy ratings before the decraniated versus Bomar Monk movie comes out. I'm really nervous about that. I hope that doesn't happen.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
All right, we do have some news headlines here that I want to burn through before we jump into your listener voicemail. And for starters, the big news, I think, is we get some first public statements about Star Wars Episode 9 since it's wrapped from the man himself, J.J. Abrams. Entertainment Tonight caught up with J.J. at the 14th Annual Oscar Wilde Awards at the Bad Robot facility in Santa Monica on last week. And that was the first time I ever heard J.J. really publicly speaking about Episode 9. And, of course, you know, he offers a lot of non-answers, but still, you know, I think it's important for us to listen to these comments since they are the first he's made since the production is wrapped. Did you see that photo that Abrams posted on social media?
The wrap?
Yeah, the wrap photo that shows Finn, Rey, and Poe in an embrace. And it's obviously an emotional moment for those actors. But for me, as a fan, I have trouble finding the emotion seeing those three together since they've shared no time on screen together in the first two films. So it's hard to look at that like Han, Luke, and Leia, the big three from the original trilogy, or even Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme, the big three from the prequel trilogy, when you have three characters who have spent minimal screen time together.
It's very surprising that they didn't develop that in the last movie. The first movie I almost understand because, as I understand it, Poe was his character was intended to be killed off early in the film. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that they quite ever saw him as being part of an ensemble like he became. And, really the time to do that. Again, I don't want to get on a whole Last Jedi thing.
No, we don't want to second guess it, but I'm saying from like an emotional response for me to see the three together, even though I'm very familiar with the characters and the actors, seeing them all together in an embrace has little impact on me because they've shared no screen time together at this point.
Right.
Now, of course, there's no questioning the chemistry between Boyega and Ridley. Finn and Rey. I mean, there's no questioning it. They were great in The Force Awakens.
Yeah. Well, and Poe and Finn have shared some screen time together.
Well, of course. So there's that like indirect thing, but to see all three of them together in some sort of emotional embrace leads me to believe that we will be getting that void filled finally in Episode 9, where we'll get to see the big three together. I mean, for crying out loud. I wanted them to build a relationship that would be the core of the whole trilogy. And now that relationship, it's, we're down to the coming up on the finish line here, and that chemistry between the big three hasn't been developed yet. But that's just how the story has unfolded. So, J.J. Abrams talking about emotions riding high after wrapping Episode 9.
It was actually a pretty emotional thing, but the cast and crew just did an unbelievable job, and I just cannot wait for you to see what we got going for you.
So, yeah, kind of a non-answer to the question about emotions riding high. He does say, though, he does reveal his confidence in the film by saying, I can't wait for you guys to see it. So he obviously thinks he has something, I mean, I don't expect him to say, oh, boy, Anna, if you didn't like The Last Jedi, you're going to really hate Episode 9. What can I tell you? Or if you really love The Last Jedi, you're going to hate Episode 9.
They always say it's the greatest thing.
JJ does have that filmmaker rap when it comes to interviews. It's almost like when the ball player gets confronted with a question, it could be any question, and he'll always say, well, we're trying our best out there on the field, and we're really coming together as a team, and we're really just taking it one game at a time. And it's like, no. That's such a canned answer. So we're getting some canned answers here from JJ. So let's see if that continues here. The next question he was asked was, did fan reaction to The Last Jedi affect his approach to Episode 9?
No, I think that every movie is its own movie, and obviously this is a trilogy. We brought to that movie all the passion and hard work that we would have no matter what. So I think I think the story speaks for itself. I really truly can't wait for you to see it.
So again, repeating his confidence.
Yeah. Boilerplate.
I just really can't wait for you to see it. Good. It'll be good. All right, so here's where we get to some good stuff. I mean, where he has to give some kind of honest answer. He talks about what it was like being in the presence of Billy Dee Williams on the set of Episode 9.
I'd met him once before, and he was such a sweet guy, but I got to tell you, I have such unbelievable respect for him. We had a great time, and he was wonderful. I mean, everyone on set had this. He just had this aura around him. He's really an incredible man and an incredible actor.
So I wonder what Billy Dee Williams thinks of J.J. Abrams.
Well, was J.J. on Lost when Billy Dee was on it? He did that one episode.
Yeah, well, he was a producer of Lost.
I wonder if that's when he met him.
From what a lot of people tell me is that J.J. was more or less part of the development team for Lost. And once that show really got underway, he wasn't really involved very much.
That was always my impression.
Yeah, in the day-to-day operations and production of that show. I mean, it was just, something he co-created, and obviously his team worked on it. So the JJ influence is probably there at all times, but still on the other side of the coin, it's not like he was there for each and every episode. He wasn't, necessarily like directing episodes and things like that. So, but again, I wonder what. Do I have to telegraph this more? I wonder what Billy Dee thinks of JJ.
I thought you were going to play some audio there.
No, I'm waiting for audio from Billy Dee.
Oh, okay.
So what does Billy Dee think of JJ?
Well, JJ's he's very schooled in the art of storytelling and making a dramatic film and working with actors, which, of course, it was something that I connected with Kirsch on. I really enjoyed working with Irvin Kershner, and it kind of reminded me of that experience.
That's great. It's like, wow, Kirsch, they're both there's a connection between the two. They're both like mensches, for Billy Dee, I think is what he's saying. They're like, and of course, Billy Dee, very well known for his role in Lost, most specifically for uttering this quote of the week.
Sorry, baby, is just business.
Sorry, baby.
Is that where that came from?
Yeah.
See,
that's
I forgot.
from
I
Lost.
should rewatch Lost. Yeah, but it was just the one. It was a weird episode. It was like where they took these background characters and did a whole episode of their backstory. Like, you couldn't even care less about what their backstory was, but their backstory included Billy Dee. And it was he playing himself? I'm trying to remember. It seemed like one.
I don't think so.
The woman was an actress or something, and she was on a show with Billy Dee.
Yeah,
I can't.
It was
remember.
like some sort of flashback to her big moment in the sun.
Yeah, and it was
acting alongside Billy Dee Williams. I'm trying to find the full scene here, which I know I have somewhere in my archives, but I'm not coming across it. Just all I can find is that just quick one. That sorry, baby. This is all I can find.
Sorry, baby, is just business.
I mean, that's a classic quote right there from Billy Dee. I mean, that really hits it out of the park right there. So
it brings that smoothness. I mean, the show had a ton of Star Wars. I mean, every week there was some kind of Star Wars reference on that show. You know,
that's right. You know, I remember Hurley.
They were all big fans.
Yeah.
I mean, there was stuff like, I remember the character Sawyer and Michael were making a boat or a raft to try to escape, and Sawyer goes walking over there and he goes, "No, this one goes here, that one goes there."
Here, let's see if I have that here.
Jacob, where is he? He's kind of dead. Turns up whenever he wants, like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
All right, well, they gave Obi-Wan Kenobi a shout out there. Sawyer, if Sawyer said anything about, let me tell you something about the galaxy far, far away, Freckles. Let's.
Yeah. Well, he was Han Solo anyway, and he one of his nicknames for Hurley was Jabba.
Here we go. Here's Sawyer from Lost.
Mind if I ask you a question, James?
Yeah, I do.
Why'd you leave Kate behind?
Wasting your time, Yoda.
Yoda. He calls him Yoda. Wasting your time, Yoda. He was a character that was developed that, you know, you wanted to hate him. You know, I mean, it was like you had to hate Sawyer. That's why he was developed.
Initially, I at first kind of felt adverse to him just because I thought he was such a ripoff of Han Solo. I was like, who is this guy trying to be Han Solo? But who's the guy who played him? Josh Holloway?
Yeah.
I don't know. I grew to like him a lot.
Sure, yeah. After a while,
and the references were. I mean, the references were just such a good in joke, you know,
right?
That they would just keep getting more outrageous and obscure and stuff. It was a fun character. I think they developed him very well. You know.
Here's another Star Wars reference from Lost. I don't know what this is.
What's wrong?
Nothing.
Carl?
I don't know. I just have a bad feeling about this.
Oh, I got a bad feeling about this. No stone left unturned by J.J. Abrams writers, Damon Lindelof.
Carlton Cuse?
Right. Here's one where Hurley talks a little bit about Empire Strikes Back.
You want to get into my business?
Let's get into yours.
Give that back.
How about we read your little diary?
It's not a diary.
See what's going on in that piece of granite you call a head.
Give it back.
Exterior Hoth, a little spy robot thingy, zips through the atmosphere and crashes into the snowy planet below. That's when Chewbacca shows up and blasts it away with his crossbow laser. He shakes his fury fist in the sky in triumph. Chewbacca. Rawr.
It's furry. Furry fist. I need to spell check it.
What the hell is this?
I'm writing Empire Strikes Back.
I'm sorry, what?
It's 1977, right? So Star Wars just came out. And pretty soon George Lucas is going to be looking for a sequel. I've seen Empire like 200 times, so I figured make life easier and send him the script. With a couple improvements.
That has got to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Okay, so I remember that one. So Hurley, they're time jumping on the show Lost. And I guess they pinpointed that they have gone back to 1977. So Hurley is saving George Lucas the trouble of actually conceiving the story for Empire Strikes Back and writing it himself.
If I'm not mistaken, the guy he was talking to is at I forget the actor's name. Is it Ken Leong or something like that?
Oh yeah,
yes, he's in
Ken Leong.
Force Awakens.
Yeah, he is. He plays a resistance officer. All right, one more from Lost. Here we go.
I had no idea you had this Lost stuff queued up like this.
My dad didn't leave when I was 10. I was a baby. I never knew him. I don't want to. It's not happening.
That was Luke's attitude, too.
What?
In Empire, Luke found out Vader was his father, but instead of putting away his lightsaber and talking about it, he overreacted and got his hand cut off. I mean, they worked it out eventually, but at what cost? Now the Death Star was destroyed, Boba Fett got eaten by the Sarlacc, and we got the Ewoks. It all could have been avoided if they just, communicated. But let's face it, the Ewoks suck, dude.
Oh, Hurley. Throw the Ewoks under. Well, it certainly does appear that Hurley is the biggest Star Wars fan on that island. Yeah, it sounds like Hurley also is one of those types, like a Patton Oswalt type of fan who wants to rewrite a lot of Star Wars.
That kind of dissertation of Star Wars always takes me back to Clerks, that scene in Clerks.
And to me, that's one of the original legitimate Star Wars and pop culture moments. I mean, nobody was referencing Star Wars in the early 90s like Kevin Smith did in Clerks. That was so uncommon. Now it's everywhere. You see it everywhere.
No, and not in that way either. I mean, just the whole premise of that conversation was about the innocent people killed on the Death Star, right? I mean, is that basically what it's all about?
The contractors and everything else. Yeah. Believe me, I've had contractors in my house, and a few of them I would like to dispatch to the Death Star and then blow it up. But all right, so that's J.J. Abrams, Lost, and all the Star Wars references. Why did we start going? Oh, because Billy D. Yeah.
Sorry, baby, it's just business.
So that's how that started before we went down that rabbit hole. We have more from J.J. Abrams talking about how Episode 9 compares to the other trilogy finales like Revenge of the Sith and Return of the Jedi.
You'll have to determine that, yourself. But I really can't wait for you to see it. And there are a lot of words that we all hope that you feel. And obviously the biggest, most important one I think is satisfied.
Satisfied.
I like that.
Satisfied. You heard JJ's wife, Katie McGrath, in the background there, and she's responsible for this particular fundraiser, the Oscar Wilde Awards that Bad Robot supports. It celebrates great Irish talents and great Irish contributions to society. And so they've been doing that for 14 years. Well, we're waiting. We're waiting for the Mac brothers to get the call out to Bad Robot. We shall see. We have one more clip, and this is a quickie. JJ was asked if he can drop any hints to us about the Episode 9 title.
No. But listen, but it's really fun talking to you, though.
No. JJ, is there a title for Episode 9 right now?
No.
JJ, can you tell us anything about Episode 9 right now?
No.
All right. So J.J. Abrams standing firm. Like I said, a lot of non-answers, but important to shine the spotlight on this particular moment because it is his first public statements since Episode 9 has wrapped shooting.
Yeah, we are really getting into that territory where we're craving for any little morsel. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm amazed at how tight this is. I mean, it seems to me this is tighter, that they're keeping this tighter than anything that we've seen since the prequels. I mean, when they did Force Awakens, remember they had the charity videos that they would put out occasionally, Force for Change,
yeah,
and stuff, yeah. And you'd get a little sneak peek at the X-wing, a creature, something. We're not getting any of that.
Nothing. And I like it that way, quite honestly. I like it that way.
I do too.
I don't want to know. I don't want to see anything from this movie until it comes out, quite honestly. Now, the reason I watch things like TV spots, promotional videos, interviews, trailers, what have you, is because that's all that is out there.
Yeah.
But if they didn't put it out there, I would be fine waiting until opening day. The anticipation for trailer releases has really become so tiresome to me as we're approaching episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
The 5th film of the new era of Star Wars. It seems like when it gets close to that time for some marketing to happen for the film, the fan anticipation has just become overwhelming and not fun. Because people get mad when events like the Super Bowl comes and goes and they don't get their trailer.
Well, why do you think they're what makes people so mad now? Why is it less enjoyable?
People on the internet who run blogs who have sources, quote, with scoops that never flippin' pan out. There was the big thing that was happening by, like so-called reputable websites that were saying, oh, there's definitely going to be an episode 9 trailer dropping before Christmas. Mm-hmm. And when that came and went, they said, oh, no. I had originally heard it was going to be either Christmas or the Super Bowl. Then when the Super Bowl comes and goes and nothing happens, then those people clam up all together. I just don't think it's fair to throw out that kind of stuff, to build phony anticipation for something that's not going to happen. Oh. You're going to be dealing with disappointment. And all that whole process has just become overwhelmingly tiresome to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that being said, I can't wait to see the trailer.
Right.
But I'd rather see the film. But we're going to get the trailer before the film, so I'll see the trailer.
Yeah, we live in an age of a lot of anxieties like this. I think it's just we have so much at our fingertips. I mean, I'm getting to the point, and I talk to people about this, and other people I'm sure feel this way, that like you get home and sometimes you just got to turn the phone off.
Yep.
I mean, literally turn it off and put it on a table in another room. You know what I mean? And just because I don't think we always know what's good for us, or at least the things that are good for us are not things we want to do. We want things right away. And delayed gratification is sometimes much sweeter. I think that's the reason why Jaws worked so well, right? The shark didn't work. Couldn't see it until later in the movie, of course. So the build up paid off very nicely. But I don't. The expectation. I think that's what you're talking about. It's like these expectations build, and people's anxieties just start going through the roof. And the speculation is, it doesn't pan out, but it builds expectations with people. So
back to JJ. Or were you going to say something else?
That is all.
Okay. But back to JJ, he was asked if we're going to be seeing a trailer anytime soon, and he had this to say. No. Let that sink in.
And that's the show, folks.
And that's it. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. All right. We have some more episode 9 interview highlights, this time with an actual actor from the film, Naomi Ackley. Naomi Ackley is making her Star Wars debut in Episode 9. There's been a lot of rumors surrounding the nature of her character. Will it be, of course, people jump to these obvious conclusions. She is Lando Calrissian's daughter. Vera Calrissian. That's what people say. Another rumor out there is that she is Finn's sister. But, I mean, Finn even said himself, he was taken from a family he never even knew. And so, I mean, how does that connection happen? I think the Finn sister thing is a long shot. I think the Calrissian's daughter is more likely. But, neither of the two necessarily need to happen. She doesn't need to be related to anyone. She could be a character on her own. Naomi Ackley. Even her last name is Star Wars, for crying out loud. Remember the Ackley?
The Ackley. Was it Ackley or Ackley?
Oh, it was. I screwed that up. I guess it's an Ackley, Acklay. Oh, poor Naomi.
Sorry to spoil it for you.
Poor Naomi. I thought she'd be able to ride that wave for her entire career, but no, it's Ackley. Damn. God, we were so close. Or she could have been Akbar. Naomi Akbar. It's our tribe. So we have audio from Naomi. She appeared recently at the Newport Beach UK Honors, and she spoke to Ode Entertainment, and they asked her some questions about her role in Star Wars. The first question was they wanted to know if she can say anything to her family about it, and if she does, what was the first thing? How did they react when she told them that she got her Star Wars role?
Are you a Jedi, Naomi? Are you a Jedi, Naomi? And I'm like, I love you, but I can't tell you that. I'm keeping some big secrets from my family, and they are hounding me for it, but it's not happening.
So it's not happening. Do you believe her? Do you think she's not telling, like, her mom or her dad or if she has a husband? There's just some people in your circle, the tightest circle you have, where it has to be assumed that they will be in on any secret. I think Naomi is just saying what she needs to say. I think her whole family knows exactly what she's doing in this film.
I don't know. I trust her. I think that there's a lot at stake professionally, that she would maybe have that agreement with her family that, hey, I can't talk about this. And
well, there is a lot at
stake. Husband and wife situations, I think, would be much, much harder.
Yes. But there is a lot at stake here. And she talked about what the penalties would be if she revealed any information about Episode 9.
Yoda would emit from the air as a Jedi ghost and strangle me to death.
So I guess that's actually part of the NDA that they sign, where the penalty is revealed that Yoda will materialize and strangle you to death. Now, see, that seems very unlike.
It's very out of character.
Very out of character. That's not. She should have said Darth Vader would materialize it.
Oh, I can't do it.
Information you revealed. Strangle you, I will.
There you go.
So she continued to talk a little bit more about Episode 9, most specifically.
I love the laughter.
Yeah.
That really makes that clip. Yoda comes out of the sky and rips your eyeballs out of your head.
Listen.
As a Jedi ghost and strangle me to death.
There's nothing cute about that. How would you like it if a 900-year-old Jedi suddenly appeared and strangled you to death? Number one, you'd probably have a heart attack by his mere presence.
Yeah, I know.
The strangling would just be, totally unnecessary. But so Naomi does inadvertently offer us a tiny, tiny little bit about her character and who she's going to be interacting with in the Star Wars universe when she talked about who she loved being on the Episode 9 set with.
I think my absolute favorites were the Star Wars new originals. I loved being with John and Daisy and Oscar, and it was brilliant to share the screen with them. Such brilliant energy. It's brilliant.
So there you hear that she shared screen time with all the big three. We don't necessarily know if they're all together, right, but I would assume they are. I think we're going to be seeing the big three together, like we were talking about earlier. I think we're going to be seeing more of that in Episode 9. I think that's essential.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good guess.
I think it's really important by Episode 9 that you have these new characters that you really, bent over backwards to establish, almost at the point of sacrificing a lot of what made the original character so great.
Yeah. Well, the chemistry between the three in the original film, was something that really sustained the whole series.
Yes.
They were separated for very large portions of the other films, but you I don't know. You always felt that they were connected, and so it made it very sweet when they finally were together at the end of the third film, Return of the Jedi.
Well, not only just at the end, though,
like
they did.
Reverse.
The big three did wage
Briefly,
the
in the
attack on Endor all together. I mean, they approached it together, and then Luke had to split to go do his thing. But you do get that, and that is a great reunion.
Yeah, where Luke just kind of comes. Yeah, waltzing in with "I'm coming too" or whatever he says. Yeah, those moments are awesome, but they come at they're awesome because of what was established already and the chemistry and our desire to see them back together again. This is almost doing a reverse of that. Mm-hmm. At least it seems to be. I mean, it's all speculative, but I think you're right, though. I think they will try to have them come together and compare notes and hopefully connect in the ways that we would like to see them.
Absolutely. Now, Richard E. Grant, another newcomer to the Star Wars saga, he's been cast as we believe he's going to be an Imperial officer. We've seen some leaked character photos, reference photos, which definitely confirms that he's going to, or a First Order officer, I should say. And Richard E. Grant, I got to admit, I'm not too familiar with this gentleman or his career, but he seems to already have a very solid fan base. And I mean, let's face it, he nominated for the Academy Award this year for Best Supporting Actor in Can You Ever Forgive Me? So he definitely is someone who's very.
He's been around for a long time, but I'm like you. I can't really think of anything I know him from specifically, other than he was in Robert Altman's The Player, but like kind of as a side character. He seems to have been on the fringe of a lot of good movies.
So he's like that quintessential supporting character, right? Bram Stoker's Dracula,
Gosford Park.
I think with the nerds, film? I think with the nerds, he gained a lot of respect in his role in the Logan film with
Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
That's right. Yeah, Gosford Park. That was a British movie, but that was made by Robert Altman. I bet you he's probably been in a couple of Robert Altman movies. That's two right there.
Yeah, well, he's had a vast, long career, and he's appeared in a ton of films. So he seems like a real good candidate for an evil officer, bad guy. In the tradition of Tarkin.
Yeah, I can see that.
Veers. He seems kind of like a General Veers type to me. I could see him putting on the helmet and hopping into the cockpit of an AT-AT.
Yeah.
But so Richard E. Grant, he appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live. He was doing a little bit of hitting the media circuit a little bit in the talk shows to promote his Oscar nomination. And he didn't win, of course. But Richard E. Grant spoke a little bit about Episode 9. Jimmy Kimmel tried to put the screws to him to get some information out of him about Episode 9. And again, here he is continuing the strategy of absolutely revealing nothing. And I like that. I like that going into Episode 9. I don't want to know anything, I don't want to see the novelization on store shelves a month before the film comes out like it was in the old days. I never understood that practice either. Nowadays, they're smart about it, and they put the novelization out after the film comes out. But Richard E. Grant, trying to keep as tight-lipped as possible as Jimmy Kimmel is interrogating him about Episode 9.
You are in the new Star Wars movie as well. Is that, we can say that, right?
Yes.
That's probably all you can say?
Oh, it comes out on the 20th of December, 2019.
We know that, too.
You do?
Yes.
I haven't even told my wife and daughter the name of my character, because as you can see, I'm a blabbermouth, and I value my knees, and I don't want to get fired or removed from the movie, so I haven't told anybody.
Would the name give someone an indication of, would the name itself tell us anything about the plot of the film?
Sorry, what?
I said, would the name itself tell us anything about the plot of the film? I see. J.J. Abrams has clicked off your hearing?
He has.
Yes. He's very powerful. He really
has.
Presses a
just
button.
Got that. Oh, my goodness, yes.
On BB-8.
Yes, J.J., no, I'm fine.
Okay, well, so he's not revealing anything. The whole idea of the title reveal, I still don't think they're 100% on what that title's going to be. I mean, crap, even George Lucas, did a bait and switch when it came to episode 6 back in 1983. It was going to be Revenge of the Sith, or Revenge of the Jedi. And then at the last minute, he changed it to Return of the Jedi. And that actually cost him a lot of money because a lot of stuff had already gone out to licensees and merchandising, and it was being produced under the Revenge of the Jedi title. And so George had to pay out of his own pocket to get all that fixed. Oh, it's Return. But so there's Richard E. Grant not giving us any information at all. So I love the tight-lipped approach. I really do. And I'm thankful that there's some serious mystery surrounding episode 9 because this is it. This is the end of the road. Anything could happen here. We really have to brace ourselves.
This may be a dumb question, but JJ is scripting this movie, right?
JJ with Chris Terrio, another screenwriter.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on what the process is. It's like musicians sometimes write the lyrics for things before they even have the music done.
Sure.
I suppose there's probably screenwriters who have a title at the very beginning before they've even put pen to paper. But But I think you're right. I think there's a reason why we don't have it yet.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they would have tapped Lawrence Kasdan, but I think Kasdan is done. I don't think he's ever going to do Star Wars again. After Solo, I think he was resistant to do Solo even after The Force Awakens because it was so labor-intensive to make Episode 7 happen that when they came back to him after that was completed and they said, okay, well, we're ready to get into your Solo thing, and he's like, that's still on the table. So he was, that's why he brought in his son John Kasdan to help him shoulder the heavy load of creating this script. I don't think that there was much gas in Kasdan's tank after Episode 7. I think he really was feeling himself being stretched a little too thin. But the Solo thing happened, and I do know that Kasdan has made the definitive statement that he is not going to be working on Star Wars films anymore.
Do you do Kasdan? Do you have a Kasdan?
I do a little bit. He's kind of like Filoni, but he's a little kind of like a little shaky.
No, now that's no. You're doing too much.
No, I got to admit, Kasdan isn't the type of guy who's been out there featured in so many interviews to the point of, where I was saturated enough with his presence on screen to actually develop a solid impersonation of it. But he's kind of like that.
So I talked to George. Yeah,
right. That's it. No, you got it. You got it. You got it. Of course you got it. You're a film freak. But so once again, Richard E. Grant, he did not win the Academy Award. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. And I believe it went to who did that award go to? Do you know, Bill?
Supporting Actor? That was the fellow that was starring in the Green Book.
Oh, right.
Ali. I can't remember.
Okay, so yeah. So Richard E. Grant didn't win. Kylo Ren also didn't take home the gold. No. Adam Driver, who was nominated for his role in BlacKkKlansman. I thought Adam was pretty good in that film. And Solo was nominated for an Academy Award in visual effects, and that went to First Man, the film about
Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong and the moon landing of 1969. Star Wars took home nothing at the Academy Awards, but there was plenty of Star Wars presence throughout the entire broadcast. I was live tweeting during the show and putting up some screen grabs of certain Star Wars things that jumped at me throughout the broadcast. The first thing I saw was at the very beginning, there was a clip from Solo, a very brief clip that showed Chewie and Saga, where they do that little headbutt with each other on the planet Kessel in Solo. They showed that very briefly in the opening montage. An unexpected Star Wars and pop culture reference happened as they were showing clips from nominated documentaries. And there was a brief shot, of a kid from this movie called Hale County, a documentary called Hale County. And it's a kid sitting in the shopping cart while his mom's shopping, and he's holding a Star Wars toy. It's like an action figure. You see it?
Oh, yeah.
So everyone's been trying to figure out what is that action figure the kid has, but nobody actually wants to sit down and watch the documentary Hale County to figure it out. So that's all we have from there. Of course, Emilia Clarke, Kira from Solo, was at the Oscars, and she was there to be a presenter. A clip from animated feature nominee Ralph Wrecks the Internet showed stormtroopers. See, did you see that?
I did see that, yeah.
Now, something really interesting. I got one reaction to this tweet.
They're First Order stormtroopers.
Oh, yes,
right?
First Order stormtroopers. I got one reaction to this tweet. Star Wars and pop culture, clip from animated feature nominee Ralph Wrecks the Internet with stormtroopers featured on Oscars. And so I have the screen cap and everything in my tweet. It's all pretty, and I got some likes on it, but only one comment. And that was from former head writer of the Clone Wars, Henry Gilroy, who just simply responded to the photo with one word: yuck. What? I was like, what does Henry not like? What is Henry saying yuck about? I haven't responded to Henry yet. And I want to know, Henry, why do you not like Ralph, or do you not like First Order stormtroopers? What's the yuck here?
Huh. That calls for an investigative.
It sure does. It sure does. And I wish I would have had a little more time. But Henry actually just responded to this tweet just a few hours ago. Yuck. Look, Henry Gilroy.
Yeah.
Yuck.
Huh.
Look at his.
What is he going? I have no idea what he's responding
either.
to there.
So I'm going to have to reach out to Henry. I haven't talked to Henry in a while, but maybe I'll do it maybe I'll tweet at him, or maybe I'll send him an email or something. Just, what's your deal, man? You don't like stormtroopers, or you don't like Ralph? Kids love that Wreck-It Ralph. I mean, come on. Maybe just whatever. We mentioned that Solo, A Star Wars Story, did not take home the visual effects Oscar. Samuel L. Jackson was on stage at Oscar 2019, looking good. I gave him hashtag bad mother. Because, Pulp Fiction, he has that
Absolutely.
wallet.
He's got the wallet. And he uses that term quite a bit.
Yes, he sure does.
So.
Yes, he does.
That's really part of his. That's all in his image wheel.
Yeah. That's like a brand mark for him.
I want you to go in that bag and find my wallet.
Which one is it?
It's the one that says bad motherfucker.
Great to see composer Ludwig Göransson. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. Ludwig Göransson. He took home the Oscar for his work composing music for Black Panther. Ludwig is also the composer for The Mandalorian, which also recently wrapped shooting.
How old is this guy? He looks so young.
He looks young, yeah.
I mean, he looks like he's... actually, I did the math, because he does mention being in college and says it was 12 years ago or something like that.
So let's get into some controversy.
Boy, he looks... Okay, all right. Are we going to In Memoriam?
Yes, we are. I caught this one right away, because when they kicked off the In Memoriam segment, which is always a very interesting thing to watch, because
it was underscored by a piece from Superman the movie.
By John Williams. Yeah. Yes, I did.
A beautiful piece, and I don't know what the title of it is, but I recognized it.
And... I say thankfully, there wasn't too much star power in the In Memoriam segment this year. Yeah, sure, you had Burt Reynolds and a few other very notable Hollywood legends.
Margot Kidder
that we lost over the last year. But there were none of those moments where it's like, oh, I forgot we lost him. Oh, we lost her. You know, it was a lot of behind-the-scenes people. And one of those behind-the-scenes people, which I thought was a beautiful tribute, was Gloria Katz, writer and producer, was featured during the In Memoriam segment. Yeah. Of course, Gloria was a Lucas collaborator and Star Wars script doctor for the original film. There's many, many lines of dialogue that she and her husband, Willard Hike, went and punched up character moments, Han Solo moments, hey, sweetheart, we're talking to the princess and all of that stuff. That all came from Gloria and Willard. So I was thankful to see she got the tribute, but I couldn't believe that the segment wrapped up without acknowledging the passing of Star Wars producer Gary Kurtz.
Very
wow.
surprising, yeah.
How do you, you're showing like talent agents and stuff in this reel, and you blow off the producer of some of the biggest films in Hollywood history?
There's always some glaring omissions every year with this.
Gary was brutal.
And I remember one year Roy Scheider was not included when he passed away. Now, here's the thing with Scheider, because I remember this caused a big discussion online and stuff. He died in February, right around the time of the Academy Awards show. And so I think some representative from the Academy came and said, well, the In Memoriam is intended to be from the year, prior, so he'll make the next one. And I don't think he ever showed up, by the way. So there were some recent deaths that I think people were kind of upset about, but apparently they're too recent to be included because they're shown. But
Kurtz died in September.
Kurtz died in September, and it got me thinking. Another omission was Sondra Locke, who was Clint Eastwood's girlfriend and was in a number of movies with him. If you grew up in the 70s, I'm sure you saw she did about 5 or 6 movies with Clint. They had a very bad falling out, and it was a very public thing. I'm not going to get into all the dirt about what happened between her and Clint Eastwood, but I do know that Sondra Locke, after that relationship ended, she tried very hard to get into production work, behind the scenes work, and was met with doors slammed in her face. Gary Kurtz seems to have kind of dropped out of Hollywood. I'm just wondering how much of that politic plays into this stuff. I don't know who decides these things.
I think you're onto something here,
Sondra Locke seems like a pretty big omission to me.
Yes.
She was actually nominated for an Academy Award.
Wow.
And she died, I think, around the same time Kurtz did. It's been a few months. So I guess I don't know. I guess once you kind of get a certain label put on you, and they're done with you. It almost seems that way to me. After Kurtz was through with Lucas, he did do a few films, Dark Crystal and Return to Oz.
Yep.
But then he did seem to kind of fall off the Hollywood map anyway. I think he had attempted several times to get back into film production on a bigger scale. Does that play into it?
Maybe. Or, George, of course, has always been very notable about his defiance to the Directors Guild. And maybe Kurtz was involved in some of that politicking as well. I don't know. I can't say definitively. I've never heard any talk about Gary Kurtz in relation to George's falling out with the Directors Guild of America, which all comes down to the fact that he did not include credits at the beginning of the original Star Wars.
Yeah, well, he got kicked out of the guild.
Because of that. Yeah. And nowadays...
Didn't they fine him? I think he had to pay some big fine and stuff.
Oh, yeah. And nowadays with movies, you don't even get the title at the beginning of the film, for crying out loud. Like minimal credits. And that's something that George really pioneered. Wow. So that's interesting. Yeah, I think there could be a political reason behind Kurtz's omission.
Yeah, and of course, to all of us growing up with Star Wars and American Graffiti and stuff, I mean, he was somewhat of a personality because he was on all these documentaries.
Yes, he was.
So
yes, he was.
Yeah, really disappointing.
Wow. And then, of course, one last highlight from the Oscars. Green Book took home the Academy Award for Best Picture, and Green Book producer Charles B. Wessler, he's a guy who's collaborated with the Farrelly brothers for forever. He dedicated the Best Picture Oscar to Carrie Fisher.
Hey, thanks very much for this, for the Academy, but I just want to dedicate this to our great... Oh, you can't hear me? I want to dedicate it to our great friend, Carrie Fisher.
And never gave any reason why or anything. I mean, Hollywood is kind of a tight community, especially when you talk about people who go back several decades. Something about Charles Wessler that I think a lot of people don't recognize is that he was a production assistant on Return of the Jedi. And there's a picture here of him with Carrie, and they're wearing Scout Walker driver helmets.
Yeah, that's a great picture. I've seen that.
So they go all the way back to Return of the Jedi. Fisher and Wessler even go back farther than that. They knew each other as kids. They grew up in Hollywood together. So a lot of people are wondering why Carrie was included in the acceptance, and that's exactly why, There's been like some criticism about that too for some reason, because people just love to complain. But I'm explaining to you exactly why Charles Wessler dedicated the Best Picture Oscar to Carrie Fisher, and explain to you their connection. They were lifelong friends. I could definitely see Carrie Fisher falling into the sort of humor that Farrelly Brothers films typically have. I mean, that seems like Carrie Fisher type humor. And so you could imagine that.
Well, something about the Farrelly Brothers movies. I mean, they can get pretty filthy, but they all have a real heart to them.
Yes.
Which is an interesting dynamic.
When you think about, there's something about Mary.
Even Kingpin. I mean,
Even the Three Stooges. Which wasn't half bad. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, the perception of a Three Stooges movie in the 2000s sounds dreadful, but if you ever get a chance to see that movie, it's actually not bad. I got to say.
I haven't seen it. I'll check it out.
Star Wars Celebration. Like we said at the top of the show, it's only next month. Star Wars Celebration Chicago is happening. And that gives you the opportunity to see RFR live in Chicago. Tickets are on sale now. Join us next month for RFR Live in Chicago at Reggie's, 2105 South State Street, about a mile away from McCormick Place and Star Wars Celebration Chicago. Join us Thursday night, April 11th. Following the first day of the convention, we will be doing a live podcast from the Music Joint at Reggie's. Doors open at 8 p.m. Podcast kicks off at 9. And we are going to hang out until we get kicked out. $25 in advance, $30 at the door. This will be a party you don't want to miss as RFR Live in Chicago invades Reggie's. Get your tickets now before they're gone. And we are going to have a great time. This is going to be a real party at Reggie's. Reggie's is just this great rock club in Chicago. And we're really looking forward to making Reggie's rock. And we can only do it with you guys. So get your tickets now. Unfortunately, tickets are not available in advance for overseas listeners. I'm so sorry about that. I wasn't anticipating that. But that's just the fact. And so if, I know at least in the RFR Patreon group, members have bought tickets for other listeners who are coming in from overseas, and then they make arrangements to transfer the tickets for money. I I can't say for sure if there's going to be admission available on the day of the event. It's quite possible it will sell out. I don't know. This is all being taken care of by Reggie's and not us here at Rebel Force Radio. So they'll shut off sales when necessary. But at least in my experience going to music clubs in the Chicago area, it doesn't seem like anything ever sells out. They're going to jam as many people into that room as possible. So that might be what's happening at Reggie's. I would recommend, if you are from overseas, to reach out to other Rebel Force Radio listeners on Facebook at the unofficial Rebel Force Radio group, the URFR, the URFR. And that's a private group you can join on Facebook. Just look for Unofficial Rebel Force Radio Facebook group. And I know some people have been taken care of over there. So give that a shot. Sure, I could go and buy tickets for people from overseas who are coming and sell it to them that way. But you know what? That's not a can of worms I want to open right now. So if you can find fellow listeners who will pick up the slack for you, then I recommend doing it that way. If you're in the States, go and get your tickets now. What are you waiting for? $25 in advance. What a bargain compared to some of these other parties. There's this huge party going on at the Museum of Science and Industry on Thursday night, the same night as our event, and they're charging $125 to get in, $100 more than what we're asking for at RFR Live in Chicago at Reggie's. Yeah, sure, they have heavy hors d'oeuvres and open bar, but if I know anything about the 501st, you're going to be waiting in line for a drink for a long time. So, hey, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love to have a lot of drinks myself, but if you're paying that much money to go to an event, you don't want to be waiting in line forever for drinks or anything. $25 gets you into Reggie's, and whatever, it'll be a cash bar, but I still think you'll get more value out of the money you spend in a night with us than just about anywhere else in the city of Chicago. So that's RFR Live in Chicago at Reggie's, just a mile away from the convention center. It's going to be awesome. You're not going to want to miss it. Jason will be there. I'll be there. We're going to have special surprise guests. Who knows? Maybe even a few celebrities will pop by. You're going to find out April 11th at Reggie's, wrapping up the first night of the convention with RFR. It's going to be a blast. Also, our Patreon community, we have a special event planned just for you. Look for an announcement about that happening this weekend, along with tickets that will be available for you for that event. That's a Saturday night event happening the week of Star Wars Celebration Chicago. But everyone else, please, don't wait. Get your tickets now. Visit reggieslive.com to get your tickets, or just look for the link at rebelforceradio.com.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
Cool. Well, yeah. I haven't heard that theme in a while.
Very cool.
You do a great job on that bass line, by the way.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm just laying down the funk, getting the funk out.
Good times are coming. I hope, our fans from overseas can make it, and I hope we don't create a scalpers market. We've got to keep it on the up and up, people. Keep it fair.
Scalpers. So, we do have one last news story. This is pretty cool. Have you seen the video Star Wars Always? It just launched this week, and it's out there. It's an amazing compilation of all the great scenes from every Star Wars film compiled together into one super tight trailer. And it was produced by a couple of RFR buddies, Topher Grace. Of course, you know Topher from That 70s Show, Eric Foreman, and everything. I mean, he was in Black Klansman as well. Yeah. He played David Duke in that. He was fantastic in that. And, Topher's been great in every film role I've ever seen him in, going back to Traffic with Benicio del Toro years and years ago. Mm-hmm. But most people know him best as Eric Foreman from That 70s Show. And along with our friend Jeff Yorks, who we know Jeff because he produced a great movie about legendary film poster artist Drew Struzan. And so Jeff Yorks, let me punch up the information on the Drew Struzan documentary. But yeah, we go way back with Jeff. He was telling us about the Drew Struzan documentary when it was like a mere idea in his head. It's called Drew, the Man Behind the Poster. And I'm pretty sure you can catch it on Amazon or other streaming services. You definitely want to check it out. It's all about the life and work of poster artist Drew Struzan, who created so many incredible Star Wars film posters from the original trilogy and the prequels. And also he did one for The Force Awakens too. But for the most part, he is retired from that business. And it was only Star Wars that could bring him out of retirement to create a poster for The Force Awakens.
Yeah, he's an amazing... He did a lot of other well-known movie posters, right? Back to the Future, I think, was his.
So Jeff Yorks was a writer on the Drew Struzan documentary, and Jeff is a filmmaker, and he hooked up with Topher, and they put together this incredible piece of video work called Star Wars Always. So you want to check that out. We talked to Topher 5 years ago, about film editing and Star Wars, because Topher had created an edit of the prequel trilogy. He took all the prequels and boiled it down into one film. And they did this legendary screening in Hollywood for all of these film website guys and bloggers. And I think Kyle Newman orchestrated that whole event.
Did you ever get to see that hour and a half edit?
Man, I don't remember if I saw the whole thing or not. I do know it was really focusing heavily on Anakin's story more than anything else. He did a pretty good job with it. But see, Topher was just trying to learn how to...
It was an exercise.
It was an exercise. And so he wanted to work with material that he was most familiar with. And there are few film projects out there that Topher's more familiar with than Star Wars. Probably none. So he wanted to work with a property and work of filmmaking that he was intimately familiar with, and he could really wrap his head around it. And so he chose Star Wars. And he told us a few years ago about how he got into editing Star Wars films as more or less a hobby, but he definitely had some professional motivation behind that as well.
I had given really bad notes on a film that I had produced, and I had wanted to learn how to edit, so I didn't give terrible notes. I don't want to be an editor, and I'm not good enough to be an editor, but I thought at least I could, the way a director might take an acting class before he starts directing a film.
Mm-hmm.
I ordered a Avid editing system and just started to try editing, and I had a tutor come to my house, and I wanted to cut on something that I wasn't in because I thought that would get too kind of vain, and then also something that had a lot of footage, and I couldn't get my hands on any movie. No one give me dailies from their films, so I thought, I love Star Wars, and there's enough footage here because there's 3 movies to maybe tell one kind of streamlined story. So I put them back to back to back. I mean, you guys have probably heard this story, but I had like 9.5 hours, and I kind of whittled it into an hour and a half.
So there you go. I mean, he was just basically teaching himself how to become a film editor and using Star Wars as his practice field. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool if you can do it. So if you're more interested in hearing that full interview, check out RFR on YouTube. We just launched a new playlist this week, In the Cantina Star Wars Interviews, where we feature that Topher Grace interview in its entirety, along with the first time we ever spoke to Ashley Eckstein, a very candid and laid-back conversation I had with Darth Vader actor David Prowse, the first time we talked to James Arnold Taylor, Jat, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the first time I actually sat down with Mark Hamill at Star Wars Celebration Japan. So those interviews are available right now on the RFR YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rebel Force Radio. And I want that to be a place where you can just hear things on demand and rediscover stuff we've done in the past or discover it for the first time. We've been podcasting for a long time, and there's a lot of stuff that is even a revelation to me hearing it after all these years, especially that David Prowse interview. I was like, my God, we got deep. He talked about how his relationship with Lucasfilm had become strained over the years because of various press leaks that he may or may not be responsible for. And he also talked a little bit about his experience on the set of Return of the Jedi, which was not a good experience for David Prowse. So that's an interview you don't want to miss, and it's all available right now in the Cantina, Star Wars interviews on the RFR YouTube channel. Also, you'll find playlists featuring the Billy D quotes of the week, RFR Rewind featuring funny and unusual moments from over the years, Sheldon Norton's RFR documentary series, When the Galaxy Listens, the Filoni Files featuring highlights of conversations we've had with Dave Filoni over the years, and of course, you'll find the weekly RFR there. Every time we launch a show, the entire show is available on YouTube. If that is your desired way of consuming podcasts, you can get it all right there. YouTube.com/Rebel Force Radio. All right, before we open up the listener voicemail hotline and move on, Bill, I didn't really hear your thoughts about Star Wars Always, the new Star Wars trailer that was developed by Topher Grace and Jeff York. So what do you think about that?
I got to tell you, that little montage really gave me the chill. You know, it was like a compilation of all the chill-inducing moments from the series, but connected in a way that really heightened it. It was very, you know, listening to that old interview you did with him a few years ago was highly relevant because you could see how, I mean, it seems like he's really grown at the craft of using film clips to tell us a narrative. Because the way that is compiled, it's like, you know, back in the day, you'd make mixtapes. I don't know how much you got into it. I used to get so into that, sitting down on the floor with stacks of CDs and going through it. And you start to realize you make choices sometimes for the dynamic of the whole thing, the whole listening experience. You know, there might be a really obscure track that's cool and you want to get it in there someplace, but you never quite find the spot for it.
Yeah.
Or you learn from having like shoehorn things onto mixtapes before that it doesn't always work, that you have to kind of have a certain kind of flow there. So it was really interesting to see the material he used, because there's stuff in there. He's got Rogue One tied up to the New Hope. He's got some audio on there that was only in trailers. There's a Princess Leia line on there that I'm not sure where he got it from. I don't know if it came from the screen test or what, where she's like, I've had enough of you moon jockeys or something like that.
Yeah, where did that come from?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't recognize it.
It must have been from an outtake, because if you notice at the very beginning of the trailer, he features an outtake. Luke working on the moisture evaporator, looking up with his micro binoculars to witness the duel between the Star Destroyer and Princess Leia's Rebel blockade runner. So, I mean, obviously that wasn't part of the film. He was dipping into all sort of different resources beyond.
And it was very effective. I mean, it just, the flow of it was very effective because he has, Biggs talking to Luke about joining the rebellion. Biggs! And it's intercut with scenes of the Rebel Alliance in Rogue One, So it's really cool to see how those are juxtaposed. I mean, it makes the scope of the saga so huge. I really loved it. That's all I could say. I mean, it's, for a Star Wars fan, it goes deep,
right,
but not too deep. It's like it hits the right emotional notes. I don't know how to. I mean, he's got the right Obi-Wan quote for a clip he's showing from Episode 3. And it's a very clean narrative, the way he's got the clips together. It's not just the cool parts. It's actually interrelated in a very dynamic way. So yeah, definitely check that thing out. I'm gonna watch it again.
So for a guy who's both a Star Wars freak and a film freak like you say that these guys are hitting it on all cylinders.
I really admired the craft of it because it hits that emotional dynamic. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yes.
You know,
emotional dynamic.
And
wow,
just the right moments. I thought it was great that scene. He's got that scene with Han in Force Awakens where he's like, I thought it was a bunch of mumbo jumbo. What a force, holding good and evil together. It's like, that's such a great choice to have that in there because there was one thing I really liked about Force Awakens. It kind of brought it back to a certain simplicity. That's a very kind of general statement. It's a force that, holds good and evil together, whatever Han says there.
Mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, but that's really the spirit of the whole saga is that type of stuff. It's distilling these very philosophical, spiritual ideas in very accessible ways. And so he takes that emotional note that, Han is kind of accepted this reality of a supernatural world, and it's intercut with things from A New Hope and even Solo. There's some Solo stuff in there too. It's really, really well.
It does a great job of making every film in the saga become interrelated. It's fantastic. So great job, Topher. Great job, Jeff Yorks. I reached out to Jeff and I was like, wow, that was unexpected. And he says, thanks so much, dude. Unexpected is the perfect word for it. For everyone who seems to be digging it and for us as far as its reception. It's been kind of nuts. So good for Jeff. Good for Topher. A couple of great guys. Good Star Wars fans. Friends of Rebel Force Radio. Doing stuff to actually contribute to the joy of the saga.
It unites the whole thing.
It sure does.
It makes you look at the whole thing, and despite whatever issues that people have been butting heads about, you look at this montage and it's like it's all interrelated. It's all one big thing. That really is the cool accomplishment of that clip. So
absolutely,
highly recommended.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Rebel Force Radio.
So, as promised at the beginning of the show, we are going to be featuring your listener voicemail. So let's open up the RFR Voice Mail Hotline.
You must contact me.
Play back the entire message.
What message?
Message after the message.
The Emperor commands you to make contact with him. It's a trick. Send no reply.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Jimmy. This is August calling in from Cumming, Iowa. I have a question. Is it better to watch Star Wars Clone Wars before Star Wars Rebels, or does it even really matter? Just wondering, looking at buying them. Thanks.
Oh, wow, August. Well, thanks so much for checking in from Iowa. And I would definitely recommend watching the Clone Wars before you start watching Rebels, because there are so many story threads that get continued into Rebels. In many ways, Rebels, to me, especially the first 2 seasons of Rebels, it felt like an honest-to-goodness extension of the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars was canceled long before the creative forces behind it were ready for it to get taken away. And so there were loose ends. And there was further character development that demanded more attention. And so Dave Filoni and the crew were able to incorporate that stuff into Rebels after a while. So characters like Ahsoka Tano, like Rex, Captain Rex, like Hondo Ohnaka even, their stories continue in Star Wars Rebels. And I think it would really benefit you to watch Clone Wars prior to Rebels. As far as a matter of personal opinion, I consider Star Wars The Clone Wars to be vastly superior to Star Wars Rebels. Both are great. Star Wars Rebels is really a great show, but still, The Clone Wars was something that was revolutionary and groundbreaking in so many ways, shapes, and forms. And I think the greatest thing The Clone Wars does is it adds such a layer of substance to the prequel trilogy that you'll never ever be able to watch those films the same way again once you've consumed the content of Star Wars The Clone Wars. The character development within that show is outrageous and really makes, especially the events of Revenge of the Sith, profound, much more profound. What do you think, Bill? Does somebody have to do their homework and watch Star Wars The Clone Wars before they watch Star Wars Rebels?
Yeah, I think so. I have very little to add. I mean, I would have to be convinced of watching it the other way around. That is Rebels first. I don't, you got to watch Clone Wars first. I mean, there are actual reveals in Rebels that are rooted in the Clone Wars story that are just not going to be. I don't see how they could resonate unless you've seen the Clone Wars. So, yeah.
Well, it's kind of interesting because our very next voicemail contributor, Matt from New York, kind of continues this sort of discussion, talking about the relationship between Clone Wars and Rebels.
Hello, my brothers in the Force. This is Matt from New York. Just rewatching the last few episodes of Rebels with my kids, and it's really such a good build-up to the finale. And I was just calling to say that I really hope that the new episodes of Clone Wars kind of gives us the same thing that we missed with that, which would be a nice build-up to a finale, even if we know kind of where it goes after that. It's really good to see how these characters and the series itself wraps up. That's it. Love you guys. Keep doing the great work. Take care.
Wow. Well, thanks a lot, Matt. You know, I agree that Clone Wars didn't get the satisfying finale that the series really deserved. Clone Wars Season 6, also known as The Lost Missions, to me, watching the final Yoda arc in Season 6, where he takes a deep dive into the Force, travels to all kind of places like Dagobah, and actually goes into, a nexus which could be considered the Force itself.
That was part of the Lost Missions, right?
Yes, that was the final.
And that had Liam Neeson in it, right?
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were cool. I got to go back to those.
Oh, essential viewing, definitely. And so those episodes, Voices, Destiny, and Sacrifice. Or no, the Lost One, Voices, Destiny, and Sacrifice. The final 4 episodes of Clone Wars Season 6, The Lost Missions. Gotta watch it. And I felt like that, to me, presented a very solid conclusion for the Clone Wars. But knowing what we know behind the scenes, we know that there was development being done on Season 7. And maybe even Season 8 to a degree. So there were more stories to be told. And I love the idea that Dave Filoni will be able to spearhead a revival of the Clone Wars happening later this year with the launch of the Disney Plus app. But are they driving toward a conclusion in the new revival of the Clone Wars? Is that going to be top priority coming right out of the gate to wrap up the series? Or is it going to be an attempt to try to establish the foundation for a new future for the Clone Wars? Could we see maybe multiple seasons of the Clone Wars happening in the wake of this revival and the Disney Plus streaming app? Will there be enough mojo behind it? I don't know what the motivation behind the creative forces of Clone Wars going into this really are. I mean, let's face it, most of the people who worked on the Clone Wars were blown out of Lucasfilm when Lucasfilm Animation was shut down following the Disney purchase. There were very few survivors of that purge. And many of them went on to work in Star Wars Rebels. Amy Beth Christensen is Joel Aaron, Keith Kellogg, many big names that you might recognize from like behind the scenes documentaries on Blu-rays, and they moved on from Clone Wars to Rebels. But Lucasfilm Animation was completely blown out of the water, and so many people lost their jobs. So the creative crew is definitely vastly different outside of a few big names who are currently working on Clone Wars. I mean, there aren't too many names who worked on the original series run who are going to be contributing to the Disney Plus streaming revival of Clone Wars. Now, that being said, obviously the biggest name is George Lucas. George Lucas is not involved in Clone Wars anymore. So I think that's the biggest difference right there. And as far as Dave Filoni's day-to-day control and participation in production of the series, I think is way more limited now, considering the fact that he's dealing also with The Mandalorian. He's got a lot of things on his plate, Filoni does. So how much attention and labor is he directly putting into this series? I don't know. I don't know if there's that much, Obviously, Dave has his fingerprints around all things Ahsoka. That I know when it comes to Ahsoka. That Dave Filoni wants to be very hands-on with that character.
Well, how do you envision a proper conclusion to that story? Like building up to episode 3, basically?
Yes, building up to the events of Revenge of the Sith. We saw the Genndy Tartakovsky micro-series take us right up to those events. And so I always thought that would be an appropriate, or even beyond the events of Revenge of the Sith. Have a season about Order 66. Order 66 will be featuring prominently in the new Star Wars video game that will make its big grand debut at Star Wars Celebration next month. It's called Fallen Order, which is going to be spotlighting a Jedi who survived the Order 66 purge.
I think I saw clips from that today. Is that Anakin is featured in it?
No, you're thinking about the newest expansion of Star Wars Battlefront 2. That will feature Anakin. No, nobody's really seen anything from Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Okay.
That all is going to be revealed next month in Chicago. So we'll get to see what that's all about.
Yeah, it's hard to visualize them delving into material past episode 3. I mean, the beginning of it. I mean, I'm just trying to.
You think with the Clone Wars?
With Clone Wars,
yes.
Yeah. I'm just trying to picture how that would be done. So we know we're at the point of episode 3, and we're telling stories in between what we saw in the movie. I mean, I'm just trying to. It's tricky, isn't it?
Oh yeah. But
anything you see with Anakin or Obi-Wan,
well, you can't have Anakin. You can't have Obi-Wan.
Why not?
Because they're both taken off of the. If you go beyond episode 3, they're both off the playing board. I mean, Obi-Wan's an exile. Anakin is no longer.
You mean post episode 3? I'm thinking so we bring the series up to the beginning of episode 3.
Yes.
And if they continue, they're going into that same period of time that episode 3 takes place.
But you don't necessarily have because you don't focus.
Forward?
You don't focus on Anakin and Obi-Wan. Give us Ahsoka's perspective of it all. I mean, Ahsoka's not present in episode 3 at all. What was that series of events like from her perspective?
True. Well, yeah.
How did she experience all
galaxy?
that?
But I mean,
was she hunted down? Was she hunted as a Jedi because of Order 66? Despite the fact she had left the Order, was she still on their in their target?
But don't you think they have to weave Obi-Wan and Anakin in there somehow? It's just one of those
why even
continuity nightmares.
Why even continue the series if you're not going to have the main stars of the show? But remember, Star Wars: The Clone Wars would go through entire seasons without focusing anything on Obi-Wan Kenobi. I remember like season 4 of the Clone Wars barely featured Kenobi at all. Or maybe I'm thinking of season 5. Those latter seasons, I mean, there was a long stretches where you wouldn't see anything from Obi-Wan Kenobi. And there are so many other Jedi you could focus on. Like I said, Ahsoka, you can... I was going to say Kit Fisto, but of course he gets stabbed by Palpatine. So he's off the plate. But, I mean, it could even find a new life with new characters. Continue the Clone Wars beyond Anakin and Obi-Wan and focus on other characters.
Well, that's the thing.
Making Ahsoka the central point.
You go past... I mean, you could continue. Okay, so you're in the Clone Wars timeline, so you can start to explore things that are happening outside of what we see in Episode 3. But once you surpass that, so you start telling stories post Episode 3. You can't even call it the Clone Wars anymore, and the Jedi are all killed. I mean, it could be interesting. I'm just trying to imagine it. There's like just logistical issues all over the place with it, it's got to be.
No, I agree. I mean,
the mind boggles.
I mean, has the series already run its course, and is the attempt to bring it back something that's actually going to hurt the legacy of the Clone Wars more than help it? Especially when you're dealing with a situation where it's clear that the quality of animation will not be up to par. From the brief glimpses I've gotten of it, that animation ain't up to par with what we saw in the Clone Wars. Just the quality alone.
Wait, what animation are you talking about, though?
No, during San Diego Comic-Con last year, when they made the big announcement about Clone Wars coming back, they did give us brief glimpses of Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. They show Anakin, and he's with Obi-Wan. They're approaching like a war room, a Republic war room, where they're, Captain Rex is standing around this situation table, and there's a hologram of somebody, and then Anakin and Obi-Wan walk up, and the hologram turns around and looks at him, and it's Ahsoka. But I mean, clearly the animation is not of the quality of what we saw during the George Lucas era Clone Wars series. It's just not there. From that brief glimpse of what I saw, it's just not there. And I'm fine with rolling along with something like that as long as the story is strong and it continues the legacy of the Clone Wars in a very positive direction. You could put a bunch of stick figures up on the screen with plastic lightsabers, and as long as the story's there, it's I don't care.
Those animatics they would do, like the extras they have on DVDs where it's, they have these action sequences all mapped out in stick figure form. You ever see those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would accept it.
Some of those are really hilarious
as long as the story is strong.
Actually, I think some of the Lost Missions was like not fully produced, right? Or am I thinking of something different? No,
you're thinking
of the cut scene with right. That was supposed to be in Episode 3. Was it Episode 3?
You're confusing a lot of stuff. We've been exposed to so much unfinished Star Wars material over the years. Now with Clone Wars, they did release a 3-episode arc called Bad Batch, which was nothing but concept art and animatics. Is kind of off-putting to look at it.
Yeah, no, you know what I'm thinking of? It was an extra on the Episode 3 DVD, and it was Yoda communing with Qui-Gon, and they didn't have the voice.
No.
They didn't have. I mean, it was bare bones. That's what I'm thinking of. But it's almost like that. That's what was used for the. That's why I found so intriguing about the Clone Wars Lost Mission was that it had a similar scene. I think they must have been inspired by that idea. But what I mean, the production. Why would why would it cheapen in that way? I mean, do they just not have the same facilities?
The budget is half of what it was that George Lucas would spend on the Clone Wars. George was spending a ton of money on Clone Wars. And that actually, I think, is something that weighed into the decision by Disney once they bought the franchise. I think that weighed in a lot as far as like why they canceled Clone Wars is because it costs a ton of money.
Well, it got better too. I mean, it improved, so they must have been spending more as they went along.
Oh, you know they were.
Yeah.
You know they were.
I mean, the later episodes compared to the movie are far superior, I think.
There are three things that canceled the Clone Wars when Disney made the acquisition. Number one was, yes, it was costing a lot of money to produce. More money than a corporation like Disney believes they should be spending on an animated series. Number two, Warner Brothers owned the distribution rights to Clone Wars. Which was, that's a dicey situation right there. And the third reason is because I've always believed that Disney had prequel-itis when they purchased Star Wars and firmly believed that the new foundation for all things Star Wars in the future comes from the original trilogy, which is, I think it's not a bad decision to make, but to discard all of the work that Lucas did to maintain the saga via the prequels was something that Disney had to come to terms with. And it seems like finally now they're starting to come to terms with that. They're recognizing the popularity of the prequels, despite the critical backlash, despite the fanboy anxieties and, people, stuff people are posting on forums and stuff. I think the nature of prequel hatred, I think that's really diminished a lot. I noticed this 10 years ago. I was, when the Phantom Menace celebrated its 10th anniversary, I firmly believed that its legacy was aging quite well, and people were starting to discard a lot of their hang-ups about the prequels that they had when it was originally released.
And I think, the Phantom Menace is 20 years ago. So you're getting to a point now where people who were young then are looking back with a lot of fondness.
Absolutely.
Now, I have a lot of fond memories, but I was, I was well into adulthood when those prequels were coming out. So I think you're seeing a nostalgia for it. I think people who were part of that is, as you've said many times on this show, that's their Star Wars.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see it coming back in certain ways. I hope they're able to do justice in bringing the Clone Wars back, because I think that seems to be something that we all, old fans and younger fans, seem to share and appreciate. I think that's where it all came together, was with that Clone Wars show. Everyone seemed to really love that. I mean,
it enhanced the prequels so well.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about back when the acquisition was made, back when the Disney purchase was finalized in late 2012. One of the first things I heard was, "Hey, the people who are in charge at Disney do not like the prequels. They do not like the Clone Wars. They don't like the whole era. They just don't like it." And right away I was like, wow, that's going to be the end of all this stuff that's been going on for all these years. But I think things are starting to come back around. You notice it in so many different ways, and there's no further confirmation that we could get than, seeing the Clone Wars return. That's a huge statement right there. That's a huge statement.
Hey guys, it's Mark from Texas again. Thinking about the episode from last week, and you guys said something that really struck a chord, and what I was thinking of was, at the end of Last Jedi, Snoke's dead. You got Kylo Ren, who's the main antagonist, and you're like, can he be the bad guy now? And he's like, he's too, having his temper tantrum, and so at the very end I felt like, man, who's the bad guy? Is it Kylo Ren? Is it Hux? And I'm like, so you guys talking about the next movie, having to have a new baddie or new bad guy supreme leader, definitely needs to be done. And I felt on the same page with you guys. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, but where do we go from here? I mean, who is that bad guy going to be? And how can we accept a new antagonist when we've been set up for the last few films to believe that Snoke first and then Kylo are our main antagonists throughout the film? I think the only way around this is to bring the Emperor back. I really do. I mean, I don't know how you frame it, how you make it happen, but I mean, he is the Phantom Menace, right? He was always the guy working behind the curtain, in the shadows, pulling all of the strings of the puppet. He was the ultimate puppet master. So I think that makes it very viable for his return. How did we not know about Palpatine when he was, putting all of this stuff in front of us? Snoke, the First Order, Kylo Ren, darkness rising, light to meet it, all that stuff. I mean, I would love it if it was all being manipulated by Palpatine, who never actually was killed off in Return of the Jedi. I don't know how you work around it, but I think it's quite possible that you could have someone working in the shadows for the first two films of the sequel trilogy, only to reveal himself in the third. When you think about the prequel trilogy, we didn't know that necessarily it was Palpatine who was the one controlling everything until the third film, when he gets fully revealed as Darth Sidious. Even in that situation, he lies about it and says the Jedi attacked him. Well, he doesn't really lie. I mean, it's all that, perspective thing, because the Jedi did try to overthrow the government, and they were working as rogues without Senate approval. Mace Windu just grabbed 3 of his buddies and said, let's go overthrow the government. That's basically what happened. Whether or not they're right or wrong, that doesn't matter. Those Jedi were staging a coup. So there's no Senate approval with this. They're acting completely rogue.
It wasn't a coup.
It was.
No, they were going to arrest him. A coup would be if they were going to take over the government.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Once they arrest Palpatine,
put him on trial,
then who is in charge? The Senate? Maybe.
Yes.
Do you think? And then,
yeah.
So who in the Senate would be in charge? Speaker of the House?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Jar Jar would be in charge. I think you have to follow the line of succession there. It goes to Jar Jar at that point.
Jar Jar.
Yeah, no, I think as a gosh, I don't really know how that government would work, but yeah, I mean,
anytime you stage a coup, you arrest the ruling governor, unless you kill him, and that becomes a bloody coup.
Yeah, but it's
all, it's a certain point of view.
I'd really have to look into the definition of this, but my understanding is, a coup is when, a government is basically overthrown from within. I don't think that was the idea of the Jedi.
It doesn't matter what their idea was, what their actions.
They were going to arrest him, and he resisted, big time.
Yes.
And then Palpatine manipulated that situation to sell his spin on it, which was not.
Was the Jedi were trying to overthrow the government?
No, they weren't.
That was how Palpatine saw it, and that's how Palpatine presented it to the public and to the Senate.
How he saw it? Who cares how he saw it?
Well, what's politics?
He's a manipulator.
Yes, yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Right.
And the Jedi fell right into his trap.
I'm just talking about the truth.
The truth doesn't matter. The Jedi fell right into his trap. They barged into his office and said that they were going to arrest him and overthrow the government.
Why doesn't the truth matter?
Well, in politics, especially in that situation, Palpatine was the elected ruler of the Galactic Senate and the government. And the Jedi, without any real proof, stormed into his office, turned out their lightsabers, and tried to overthrow his leadership, his rulership. They tried to overthrow him.
Well, overthrow would suggest that they
turn on the lightsabers.
Okay. Well, we'll have to disagree. They were taking him into custody.
That's not how he saw it. When he saw those lightsabers turn on, he's like, they're not taking me into custody. They're going to kill me. So he defended himself. I'm Team Palpatine on this one, man. I am Team Palpatine.
Look. They obviously blew it. They fungled the job.
Screwed it up.
Yeah, I mean they did screw it up. There's no doubt about it. But that doesn't make Palpatine morally correct.
No. I'm not talking morals here.
I mean,
right?
he was.
We all know he's a bad guy.
He orchestrated a situation in order to do what he did.
But nobody else knew this. And what kind of proof did they have? What kind of proof did they have?
I don't know.
Anakin revealed he had reservations, and Mace Windu had the Force was talking to Mace Windu, and he recognized that there was something
I guess
up,
we'll never know what Windu's evidence was. But that would have been their burden at that point.
Yes.
When they arrested him, they would have had to present their evidence.
That's right.
But they never got the chance because he killed them in response.
Well, they pulled the sabers on him. They barged into his office when he was just sitting there looking at some holographic readouts of stuff. He's doing his work, just going through his regular day as Supreme Chancellor. And these yahoos bust in, 4 of them, and they're swinging weapons at him and stuff. Of course he's going to defend himself.
Well, they were given the authority to do that.
By who? They were not given the authority to do that. They were working outside the Senate. They did not have Senate approval. They were working as rogues.
Well, they had the authority.
No, they didn't.
The Senate had been using them all that time.
But the Senate never gave them authority to overthrow the government.
They were fighting a war for them. I mean, they were
generals in an army.
Right.
That doesn't give them carte blanche to storm into the chancellor's office, pull lightsabers on him, and demand he come into their custody so that they can overthrow the government, which is exactly what was happening. And Palpatine presented that evidence to the Senate and to the galactic public. And they all believed it because that's what everyone saw. That's what everyone saw. The Jedi had no evidence. Think about that.
Well, once again, they never had an opportunity to present it, so we don't really
what did they have?
What they would have put together.
What did they have?
I don't know. I'd have to go watch the
movie
notion.
Again. They had a notion. They had no solid evidence. They had no line of connection between Palpatine and the Sith, the separatists.
Well, wait a minute. No, wait. Hold,
nothing.
Slow down. Slow
nothing.
Down.
They had nothing.
Slow down a second. How did I'd have to rewatch it. How does that scene play out?
I don't have to rewatch it because I know it like the back of my freaking hand. They went into Palpatine's office to overthrow the elected and ruling government without any authority whatsoever. They were acting on their own as rogues.
They were given authority.
What authority? To work outside of any sort of democracy?
Okay, so you're saying they should have gotten a warrant.
Yes.
And done it that way. Well, maybe that's true.
Or getting Senate approval or something.
All I'm saying is that within the context of the movie and the story.
Wait, we know good and bad.
They were
good versus bad.
They were going.
That's very simple. But that's
arrest
still,
him. They weren't going there to murder him and take over the government.
You know this. They're the ones who fired up the sabers.
All I'm talking about.
They fired up the sabers when all Palpatine did was turn his chair around and look at them. What the hell, man? You're gonna bust in and just pull your weapons on the guy and take him into custody?
If they have the authority to arrest him.
They had no authority. They had no authority. The Jedi had no authority.
If they had the authority to arrest somebody, I mean, they were militarized. They were fighting in a war on behalf of the Senate. The Senate had authorized them to do that, so they did have authority.
Of course, just like any military.
I'd have to go reference my Jedi holocron books or whatever to find out exactly how I can't sit here and cite Republic law to you.
Well, let me
just finish my sentence. I'm just trying to say if they had authority to arrest people, which it seems to me they did, then they can come armed to do so and ask Palpatine to come into custody.
But he is the general in charge. He is the commander in chief.
Have you ever heard of the term checks and balances?
He's the commander in chief.
Nobody is above the law. And if he's doing something illegal, if he's engaged in a crime, then they have every right to arrest him.
But there's a process. There's a process. They have to get authority from the Senate.
There is something called.
They had no authority from the Senate.
There's something called due process. The first step in that is him getting arrested.
But who gives the call to arrest him?
It doesn't give him the right to react in armed confrontation with them necessarily,
unless they pull their lightsabers on him.
But again, if they have the authority to arrest somebody,
they had no authority to arrest Palpatine. Okay. He's the commander in chief.
We're going to go in.
He's the commander in chief.
We're going to go in circles on this.
All right. Well, you know what you got to do. You have because like a lot of people are going to send us emails. They're going to send us voicemails. People are going to be talking about this on Facebook. The Jedi were acting in a rogue fashion. They were working outside the system, and they were judging things on an impulse almost. They had no evidence to back up what they were trying to do. They didn't go through proper channels. Let's face it. The Jedi don't have some sort of extreme authority to do whatever they want.
But see, this is where it gets so hypothetical because we're talking about a system.
Well, it's all hypothetical.
We're talking about a system where we don't know what the proper channels are. And, I'm just going based off of what they give us in the movie. And it seems to me that this system of government had authorized the Jedi to do an awful lot and gave them a lot authority.
Not not overriding the commander in chief.
Well, it's not necessarily. But, Jim, checks and balances. If the commander in chief is engaged in illegal activity, then people who are other officials, who have that authority can arrest somebody. I mean, it can.
But they need to present their case.
Well, that would have happened.
They had no case against Palpatine.
That would have happened after he was arrested, presumably.
Yeah, right.
They would have had a chance to give him his day in court and present their case.
I don't believe that in the Star Wars universe,
and I think he says we will bring him to trial. I think that's a line.
Yes,
isn't that a line?
Obviously, that's what they intended to do.
So that implies due process.
That's what they intended to do. But who gave them the authority to do that? Who gave them the authority to arrest him? It just seems like they're working.
Well, who gives the police authority to arrest? I mean, they're deputized, and the Jedi were deputized, as far as I could tell.
Well, that's fair. Okay, that's fair. I thought they were working. They were more like I always felt like they were officers of the Senate, and that they worked on behalf of the government. And should they want to overthrow the chancellor,
they're not against. They are
proper circles and proper channels for them to go through would have been to appear in front of the Senate and state their case. I mean, right? I don't know. Well, I want you to wrap your head around this more because I know, Bill, you'll come up with a definitive answer if you wrap your head around this a little bit.
I really would have to sit down and look at it deeper.
You want to dig into those scenes? I will tell you this.
I will tell you this. That one thing is certain: they didn't have an arrest warrant. That's for sure.
Right.
And that now, again, we're talking about a galactic government hypothetical system.
Right.
Maybe they don't have warrants. Okay,
that's true. That's true. Of course,
that's what we have.
I'm placing a lot of real world sensibility into the Star Wars political.
Yeah, and that's what makes these discussions somewhat difficult because I don't know what is in their constitution. They may not have that right. I mean, who knows? I think they should. I mean, I think there's a good reason why we have those type of laws that you can't just, that if you arrest somebody, you have to usually have a warrant unless you have cause that is.
And you have to go in front of a judge to get that warrant to arrest. You have to go in front of a judge.
You can get arrested
on the judge.
You can get arrested on the spot. I mean, if you're committing a crime. I mean,
but nobody's going to bust into your office, your workspace, and drag you out of there on a mere notion.
No, well, you have to. It has to be an emergency, and that that is arguably what was going on here. If they have cause to believe a crime is in progress and lives are at danger, they can arrest without a warrant.
But even the Jedi themselves.
So I mean, there are exceptions
outside of what Palpatine revealed to Anakin in his own way. The Jedi had no evidence of Palpatine's tampering with the war, or his manipulation of the Senate, or even his dark side abilities. They had no evidence at that point when Mace walked through that office door with his buddies, Kit Fisto, and
again, this is something that gets very very difficult to talk about because a Jedi senses things. Is that admissible in court?
No way.
No
way. No way is that admissible in court. No way is that admissible in court.
It's all hypothetical, though. It's all hypothetical.
It'd be like having, do you
remember the movie Minority Report?
Yes.
And it was based, the psychic beings, I think they were called precogs, that the police arrested people based on the potentiality of a crime being committed, based on what the precogs were predicting. So they would get these visions that somebody was about to commit a crime, and that gave, in that world, the police reasonable cause to go arrest somebody before they even did anything.
But even in the Star Wars universe, you deal with a level of skepticism about the Jedi. You deal with a level of mistrust for the Jedi, which was already in place before Palpatine. That was already there.
Yeah.
So, just because someone is a Jedi doesn't give them authority to circumvent laws and regulations. I mean, that's just how I feel. I think Mace was acting impulsively, yes, and I think he was working off of lack of evidence. He was motivated by a mere notion. True, he was correct. I mean, he recognized the evil in Palpatine, but he never had anything to prove it.
Well, but that's really the thing, though, that's important. We know he was right. I'm not saying he acted perfectly. Obviously, it didn't work out well for any of them. But
it didn't work out well. That's an understatement. It just didn't work out well. Mace Windu is getting thrown like several city blocks.
But his cause was just. We know he wasn't there to overthrow the government. I think that's really what brought the whole.
Who?
Mace.
But by removing the head of the government, what are you doing? You are overthrowing the government. Now, again,
no, that's not.
Well, of course, because he wanted to arrest him.
True.
He wanted to arrest him
into this argument to begin with,
because he wanted to arrest him and run him through the proper channels by putting him on trial in front of the Senate. Okay,
exactly.
But the Senate didn't approve him going to do this.
Well,
he's working as a rogue.
Well, you're assuming he needs Senate approval to do it.
I believe he did need Senate approval
and I'm
to do it. Everything I know
to suggest
no,
that they had
is.
authority to do that.
There absolutely is, because it is mentioned many times that the Jedi work in service to the Republic, the government, and the Senate. They serve the Senate. They serve the established government.
But they were given a certain authority, so I guess the question is what was the scope of the authority? Did they have to go to the Senate for everything? Obviously not.
They were ambassadors, dude. They were ambassadors. Pre-war, Jedi were ambassadors.
But that was
during the war, they got elevated to general status.
Right.
Still, neither of those classifications give the Jedi full authority to work carte blanche and do whatever they want.
But I didn't say do whatever they want. I said arrest Palpatine
with no evidence.
Well, we don't. Again, we don't know what they never had an opportunity to present it.
A Sith Lord. So, all right. Well, you know what? This is definitely.
Maybe they would have been able to use Anakin to testify, and his testimony would have been pretty powerful.
That is true.
That is evidence.
Okay. You know what? You do have a confession to an authorized officer of the Senate, Anakin Skywalker, a general in the clone army, Anakin Skywalker. It was revealed directly to him. Did Palpatine say?
I'm a Sith Lord, and I'm going to make everyone suffer.
I mean, who's to say that having a Sith Lord as Chancellor is a bad thing to begin with? Just because just because it works counter to the Jedi religion and beliefs, just because it works counter to that doesn't necessarily mean that having a Sith Lord as the Chancellor is a bad thing.
The trains will still run on time.
Well, and that's something that actually powered Palpatine's rule of the galaxy post Revenge of the Sith, is the fact that he was able to manipulate the population into believing that he had created safety. He had created peace. These were all the things that the people of the Republic wanted, and Palpatine delivered. So do they care even if he's a Sith Lord or he's a Jedi or somewhere in between? Do people even care? No, they just look at results. And Palpatine presented the galaxy with
I would
results.
say it's not just results, it's action. Okay, I mean it's you're saying the ends justify the means always. I don't think people think that way. I mean, I think if they're if he's using genocidal tactics to achieve
of course, and of course nobody knew about that either. I mean, that stuff was all covered up.
But I mean, there is a point there. I mean, I do, can see a certain point of view that belief systems, at the end of the day, aren't going to matter. I mean, actions ultimately are what's going to matter to people in governance.
And the public perception of Palpatine at that point, if the public perception of Palpatine at that point was, here's a guy who's ended the war. This guy's put an end to the war that's been going on for 3 years and disrupting countless numbers of star systems throughout the galaxy. Palpatine was victorious at that moment. He was probably already considered a hero by many, many people in the Old Republic at that point because he had ended the Clone Wars and was taking credit for it too. Count Dooku, dead. General Grievous, dead. The Serpent had its head cut off twice. And the war was ending. And Palpatine was riding pretty high until Mace Windu busted in with his buddies to destroy that party. So, I mean, Palpatine was literally on a victory lap when the Jedi decided that he needed to be removed from office. Justify that. Justify that without evidence. Think about that for a second. They were working without authority of the Senate. They were working completely on their own based on a mere notion, without evidence. Listen, at the end of the day, of course, they are right. Their actions were righteous. Mace Windu was correct in going in there to try to usurp the evil that had controlled the galaxy, but everyone else didn't see it that way. It all looked pretty good. The Separatists were on the run. Yeah, I mean, timing is everything, And while Mace was right at the end of the day, I think public perception would prove otherwise. That's why it was so easy to frame the Jedi at the end. Mace going in there to arrest Palpatine played right into Palpatine's hands. I mean, he just played them. So that's a lot to think about. You, I know, are going to mull over this quite a bit. I have some very firm opinions on all of this. So I hope this is a conversation we can continue. And I know a lot of people are going to be writing us. They're going to be leaving voicemails. They're going to be posting stuff to social media. But I think this is a lot to chew on right now. If you just look at it on surface level, I think the Jedi were wrong. I think Palpatine was absolutely right to go in front of the Senate and announce publicly that the Jedi tried to overthrow the government and they left him scarred and deformed and all that stuff. I mean, he's playing on people's emotions clearly. He's trying to present himself as a pathetic public figure who was merely attacked in his office for just trying to do his job. Here's a guy who ended the war and he should be on a victory lap. And the Jedi. Well, nobody knows that though. No one knows that. I know everything Palpatine does is based in manipulation and twisting facts and creating different perspectives that aren't necessarily based in the truth. But when you look at it on surface level, the Jedi were wrong. And Palpatine used that attempt to overthrow his government. He used that to paint the Jedi as being the enemies of the Republic.
Hey, Jimmy, Jason, and I'm assuming Billy Mack will be on the show. At least Billy Mack and Jimmy. Just saw on Facebook you guys want us to leave messages, and I just saw on the news Topher Grace did another edit thing with the trailers. Oh my God, guys, you have to check it out. It is the coolest thing. It gives you chills. It's an interesting way of looking at it, and it's really good. Now, to talk about what's been going on the show lately, I really love Billy Mack and Puppet Lando. It cracks me up. It's extremely funny. I've been listening to the commentaries with you guys done with Sam and years ago, and I'm wondering, is Sam ever going to come back and do another one, like do The Last Jedi? I would love to hear what he thinks about the rest of Luke's journey, because I've been listening to what he's been saying in the Return of the Jedi commentary, and some of the stuff he says, it makes you think. And I'd be interested in hearing his opinion. Thanks. Bye.
Wow. Well, thanks a lot for calling in. We really loved doing those commentaries with Sam. I mean, they were great, and we were planning on doing the Mortis trilogy and Rogue One and The Last Jedi, but it was shortly after we recorded our commentary track with Sam for The Force Awakens. We had tried to do another commentary with him for Rogue One, and we were told that Lucasfilm had said Sam is not available to do those commentaries with us anymore because he is an actual participant in the production of those films. Sam actually provides voice work for Rogue One. I think he may be one of the voice artists for The Last Jedi, along with a lot of other people like James Arnold Taylor, Matt Lanter. Familiar voices from the Clone Wars were then used to provide voices for stormtroopers and what have you. And Sam was definitely one of those guys. So after we heard that, we didn't want Sam to get into any kind of weird trouble with Lucasfilm or anything. So we just sort of gave up on that idea. And I know James Arnold Taylor had tooled around with the idea of doing commentary tracks for episodes of the Clone Wars and then posting those up on YouTube. But he was, again, told he can't do that because he's an active participant in the production of those episodes. So you sense that there is a consistency here with this policy. And we would never want to do anything to jeopardize Sam and his relationship with Lucasfilm and his career, and put him on the spot to do a podcast commentary track with us. So if anyone's been wondering why you haven't heard Sam doing those commentary tracks with us for the last few films, that's exactly why. You know, I have no hang-ups with Sam whatsoever. I quite honestly haven't really spoken to him much over the last couple of years, but he's a great guy. He's a Chicago area guy. He's going to be appearing at Star Wars Celebration Chicago. And we certainly did have a lot of fun doing those commentary tracks with him. But the realities of his connection to the productions of those films and his status as an actor make it hard for him to then apply his talent to something like Rebel Force Radio. I think in the back of their heads, Lucasfilm is thinking to themselves, well, if Sam Witwer or any other actor is going to be doing a commentary track for one of these films, they'll be doing it for us and not for some independent fan-produced podcast. So it was great while it lasted, but unfortunately, those are the realities of the situation right there with Sam. And I'm sure if you asked him, he'd tell you the exact same thing, because that's what he told us. We do plan on doing more commentary tracks. We still have to do Rogue One. We've never done Rogue One. And I got to be honest with you, Bill, the more that film is out there, the more I find myself attracted to it. I find that Rogue One hits the nail on the head a lot when it comes to providing us with the proper Star Wars vibe and consistency that we've grown used to throughout all of these years. I think Rogue One is the one instance where they really got it right. So I want to go back and do a commentary track for that.
We haven't done a holiday special.
We keep
or
threatening
Corvette
that.
Summer.
Corvette Summer, that's a whole different beast. But the holiday special could be interesting. That would be the first time in many years I actually would have sat through that thing.
It's tough to do.
Yeah, that's
might
a tough
have
one.
to do it 2 sessions.
I think Rogue One is definitely a higher priority at this
Yeah.
time, and maybe over the summer. Maybe over the summer when we're dealing with a little bit of downtime as we anticipate all the big Star Wars things that are going to be happening starting this fall, with the launch of the Disney streaming app, the debut of The Mandalorian, the return of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and then taking us all the way into December with Episode 9. We'll be very busy post-September, I'm sure. So I think the summertime might be a perfect opportunity for us to knock out at least Rogue One. And then if we have a sense of adventure, maybe we can dive into the holiday special. If we have a sense of self-loathing, and we'll dive into the holiday special. It's not that bad. The holiday special has its kitschy appeal. I was listening to myself talking to Mark Hamill on the In the Cantina Star Wars interviews playlist on YouTube, and I was listening to that interview I did with Mark, and I brought up the holiday special to him. And it's pretty interesting to hear what Mark has to say. So check out that interview, Mark Hamill, on the Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel. But Mark was very detached from that whole production, extremely detached. And when I spoke to him about it, Star Wars Celebration Japan, it really seemed like it was the first time he had talked about that holiday special in a really long time. So whether or not we, get the guts to dive into the holiday special, that we'll try maybe this summer. That's all I have to say. What do you think, Bill?
Holiday special, absolutely.
That's a no-brainer for Billy Mack. He wants to jump right into that. That's awesome.
Rebel Force Radio.